Hello everyone, for Telestar, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas, Venezuela. Thanks for joining us to begin today as the COP21 Climate Summit continues in Paris. Latin American countries have made what is a bold and unprecedented proposal. Speaking on behalf of the community of Latin American states, CELAC, Ecuadorian President, you see him there, Rafael Correa, proposed the creation of an international court of environmental justice. Now, the aim would be to impose sanctions on countries and companies that break global environmental treaties, and to avoid the kind of damage caused in Ecuador by the U.S.-based oil company Chevron Texaco.
We are requesting Texaco to pay its debt with the tropical rainforest of Ecuador that they destroyed for 20 years, but also with all the victims that were affected by the pollution generated by Chevron Texaco for 20 years in Ecuador. So we have brought the voice of the affected community, of the government of Ecuador, to say to Chevron, we cannot have a COP21 without having these big transnational corporations that really damage the environment, the well-being, and the right to life and development to people of the South. So that's also a part of the strong message that Ecuador is bringing to COP21.
Well, our main position is defending the principles of the convention, basically the responsibilities, differentiated the responsibilities based on historical responsibilities. What we want is an agreement which is binded, which is basically concerning the right of developing countries to develop, to eradicate poverty, at the same time that mitigate or adapt to climatic change.
And United States President Barack Obama said some hours ago that he too believes a legally binding agreement is needed. Obama spoke during a press conference in Paris before leaving the COP21 summit. The U.S. president added that a mechanism should be established to enforce the agreements reached at the COP21.
Consequences of a changing planet. This is an economic and security imperative.
And with more now, as the second day there of the COP21 comes to an end, we turn live to our correspondent who is there, Luis Arroyo. Hey there, Luis. We saw President Correa there sort of representing Latin America. He's calling for what is being called an international tribunal. Also, President Obama says it's important to make any agreement there legally binding. Do we know if there's any possibility of an agreement that would include real mechanisms of enforcement like that?
Hello, Cody. Well, that's a concern of all representatives of social society and progressive governments like Ecuador and Venezuela. I mean, the climate discussions have been taking place for more than 20 years, and there's an agreement, which is the Kyoto Protocol. So right now, what they say is starting to start discussions on how we pretend to live for the next years in this planet. And that's what needs to be discussed with justice, as President Correa said.
And Luis, we know that countries like China, the United States, and India are currently some of the largest carbon emitters in the world. Now, are those countries, China, India, backing the idea of a legally binding agreement?
Well, I can tell you that all the world leaders and their delegations who are present here are very confident and say that they will deliver the so-called Paris Agreement. They have started calling it like that next week. So basically they say they will do it.
What about those voices of alternative social movements? How are they being heard both inside and outside of that summit?
Yes, well, they are here represented by indigenous leaders and NGOs who are taking part also in the discussions, and they have shown a very critical position, you know. But let me tell you that despite the ban that French authorities have imposed on protests, there will be many actions taken by these groups during the COP here in Paris, and they will also include the social society, which is totally not allowed to come here to the Le Bourget, the place where the COP is taking place.
All right, Luis, thanks so much.
Thank you.
The delegations of the FARC guerrillas and the Colombian government continue their peace talks in Havana. This time, the discussion is centered around the future of the rebel group as a political movement. Now, the FARC has outlined the importance of providing security guarantees to them and to the Colombian civilians. The rebels fear that paramilitary forces could take advantage of an eventual disarmament to attack populations in FARC-controlled areas or to target union leaders and other critical voices. In Argentina now, the grandmothers of Plaza de Mayo have announced they have found the 119th disappeared grandson. Mario Bravo, a young man born in the Tucumán province, was abducted as a baby by the military dictatorship while his mother was in prison. Now, Bravo, who contacted the grandmother's organization, is a rare case since his mother is still alive. Most of the parents of abducted babies during Jorge Videla's dictatorship were killed to erase any trace of the criminal network. And we're going to turn now, go back to Colombia, because we have Natalia Margarita joining us now, our correspondent there in Colombia. Hello there, Natalia. We're talking about the latest round of talks between the FARC government between the FARC and the Colombian government. Now, we know that during this current round of talks, the FARC has brought up again the issue of paramilitaries, and this is an issue we've been hearing a lot about. How is that being addressed so far by the government?
Well, according to analysts, but mainly to those victims, Cody, that continue to face threats and intimidation from paramilitary groups, they said that little, if nothing, has been done yet by the Colombian government to address and to tackle paramilitarism here in Colombia. Quite the opposite. What very recent reports by different research centers have revealed is that there is right now a resurgence of paramilitarism in Colombian territories. For instance, very recent, a latest report said that at least 14 active paramilitary structures are present in at least 330 municipalities here in Colombia. So in the wake of the current peace process, it's not just the FARC, the ones that have raised the concern regarding this resurgence of paramilitarism, but also social activists and social leaders here in Colombia. And as I said before, victims in the territories that continue to face threats from these paramilitary groups, Cody.
Let's talk about timetables, Natalia. Do we know how long this current round will continue?
This current round is the 43rd, and it was expected to end last Saturday. However, both sides, both parties involved in the negotiations decided to extend. They didn't make it clear for how long they are going to extend this current round of peace talks, but what they did say is that they are speeding up the negotiations to see if before ending this round of peace talks, they can reach an agreement on the issue of victims and justice, Cody. So we still need to know until when they are gonna hold this current round of peace talks.
All right, Natalia, we'll count on you to keep us posted. Thanks so much.
Back to you, Cody.
Speaking during a press conference in Paris, Brazilian President Dilma Rousseff, she expressed her rejection of Argentinian president, the Argentinia's new president-elect, Mauricio Macri, his plans to invoke Mercosur's democratic clause to suspend Venezuela from the regional trading bloc.
The democratic clause in Mercosur cannot be used based on hypothesis. It has to be used based on facts. I want to highlight that this is always since the beginning of Mercosur, been the case. And this clause allowed Mercosur to not agree with the ousting of President Lugo in Paraguay. Now for Brazil to apply to the democratic clause, it would have to be based on actual facts, not assumptions.
As parliamentary elections come closer here in Venezuela, the people here in Venezuela, the neighborhoods are eager to cast their ballots. Our correspondent Izzy Afinbo now explains why political participation is high in Venezuela's barrios.
Community members of La Vega are building a staircase. The residents at the top of the neighbourhood don't have access to water, so the 140-metre structure will allow them to go up and down the hillside safely to collect it. Arranged by the community council and funded by the municipality, the project will take about 3 weeks to complete.
What we are doing here is remodeling the stairs and making path for the citizens, so that things that baby Jesus gave us look better and prettier. It is practically as a gift for them that we have here, and yes, putting in the work little by little.
The neighbourhood might look haphazard, but its residents are well organised. The community council paved these streets, which were rubble just months ago, and refurbished sports pitches and other community buildings. Jose Acosta is the council's accountant and helped allocate funds for the renovation of this school. Nothing is approved without discussion and a vote.
If there is no organization, we don't have anything. Our fundamental base is organization, because the census, house by house, tell us how many families live there, which people live there, and let us know what each family needs. For us, a communal, popular, organized power to give a response.
It's not just infrastructure overseen by local councils. In 2006, Hugo Chavez passed a law to empower local citizens to form neighbourhood-based elected councils that would make a whole range of decisions to help people go about their day-to-day lives.
I have tried, I have done the procedures, and we have obtained a mercal here in the community, of which I'm practically in charge of internally. Communitarially, because I don't receive any payment, because my labor is communitary. I like to collaborate with the community.
Local popular organisation has been one of the key advances of the socialist governments. The people here in La Vega rely on their community council for everything, from their water supply to the very streets they walk on.
Isabel Fimbo, Telesur in Caracas.
State workers in Peru continue striking after weeks without any significant response by the government. Now, with the latest on that story, we turn to our correspondent there, Raul Mora.
Burning a coffin representing Congress was the way administrative public health workers expressed their rejection to the 2016 budget, approved by the legislative power. The budget did not include resources for the sector that would have allowed the formalization of 15,000 workers as regular employees.
We're not going to give up our measure to struggle, and we're not going to continue struggling with aggressiveness so that the government does not do whatever it wants. The government has to respect the workers who are more than 15 years working, and practically with what they are approving, they are discriminating.
The ruling party described the protests as a common strategy by workers and claimed it was not possible to attend to their demands.
It is usual that when the budget is approved, all the sectors that rightfully have better expectations react. The public ministry, the judicial power, everyone has been protesting, but overall the budget has to be balanced.
However, those Congress members who opposed the budget claim it was designed to serve only particular interests at the expense of common citizens.
Several sectors who have been organizing, in mobilizations, striking, have not been included in the 2016 general budget of the Republic because the majority of parties in power, what they do is approve a budget evidently extractivist to favor the economic power.
Without a solution for their demands, public health workers will continue with their strike and promise they will radicalize their actions. Rael Mora, Telesur, Peru.
The Committee of the Families of the Detained and Disappeared in Honduras, CONFADE, commemorated their 33rd anniversary, still claiming information of their family members that were captured and disappeared by the Honduran state during the 1980s and during 2009 coup. Our correspondent in Tegucigalpa now reports.
In the 1980s, the United States government supported the Central American government to fight against communism. This meant thousands of human rights violations against citizens who were against the economic and political powers. In Honduras, thousands were captured, tortured, and disappeared. Families of the victims of these state policies are still demanding justice.
When I got to CONFADE, I was a 14-year-old girl, and my brother, Samuel Perez, had been disappeared. He came with Julio Cesar Mendez, Enrique Lopez Hernandez, Maribel Gertrudis Montes from Cuba. In those days, it was a crime visiting Cuba. They had gone there to receive a human rights course. In the border of Guasales, they were captured by the DNI. Then we as a family went out to look for someone to help us, and we realized that we were not the only families looking for help. And that is how 16 families started to get together, and those 16 families founded COFADE.
The COFADE is the Committee of the Families of the Detained and Disappeared in Honduras and is commemorating its 33rd anniversary, pointing out that little has changed since the days of the military regimes.
They have done absolutely nothing to prevent the past from being repeated. On the contrary, they have stimulated and want to present the tortures of the past as those who can provide security, and they want to sell the people with the talent to lead the country. And that has only one name, and it's impunity. We have the conviction that the past can't be forgotten, and that puts it under impunity. It is not a possibility. We will only be able to speak when they admit that that past must be used to build spaces for memory.
Since the 2009 coup d'etat, more than 200 members of the political resistance have been murdered for their political activities. Thousands of human rights violations have been registered, in their majority in actions coordinated by the people that in the 1980s were accused of crimes against humanity and that today are still enjoying impunity. Gerardo Torres, Telesur, Central America.
British Prime Minister David Cameron has been pushing for airstrikes in Syria by the UK, but will the United Kingdom take military action ultimately against the Islamic State there? We'll be talking about that story when we come back.
Discover Latin America and the world in our programs. Telesur Reports, The Real USA, the stories behind the tweets. Ataman, Lives, Know Your Body, Open Files. Exposing the conflicts that affect our people. Compelling personal stories and the most controversial events. See it all on telesurtv.net in English. Telesur. Wherever the news, you'll be there.
Day by day, they're in the street with one mission: change the world through their actions. This is a different type of program, a conversation. The perspective you won't find in traditional media can be found on The Laura Flanders Show. Watch it on telesurtv.net/English. Telesur, wherever the news, you'll be there.
We need to understand the world we live in. We require news with critical points of view, thorough analysis, and social commitment. This information is vital to think, to understand, and to change. The world demands a new perspective. telesurtv.net/English. Wherever the news, you'll be there.
The President of the United States, Barack Obama, met with his Turkish counterpart in Paris to discuss Turkish-Russian relations. During the meeting at the sidelines of COP21, Obama urged Turkey to de-escalate recent tensions with Russia that have undermined his efforts to strengthen the U.S.-led coalition fighting the Islamic State group. Instead, he asked the two countries to focus on ISIS as a common enemy and on reaching a political solution for Syria. Members of the British Parliament will vote on Wednesday on whether or not to conduct airstrikes in Syria. But before the vote, Parliament will debate the issue for 10 hours. Leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, gave a radio interview earlier where he stated only a small number of die-hard Labour MPs were going to vote for the airstrikes. Now, Corbyn pointed out that the Labour conditions for taking military action have not been met. The controversial vote has become one of the toughest challenges for Corbyn as party leader.
Mr. Speaker, that is why all the advice I've received.
Since the state of emergency was declared after the deadly attacks in Paris that killed 130 people, French police conducted more than 2,000 raids throughout the country. According to French Prime Minister Manuel Valls, over 300 weapons were seized and more than 200 people have been placed under police custody. The state of emergency will last until February 26, but could possibly be extended. Ahead of a meeting of NATO foreign ministers, NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg said the alliance faces a dark security environment.
The security environment in which we meet today is dark. Terrorist attacks, violent instability, the breach of international rules. These are serious challenges from many different directions, and NATO is responding. Today and tomorrow, we will take the next steps.
Today marks the International Day of HIV/AIDS. Now, the date was declared by the World Health Organization in 1988 to raise awareness on the virus and reduce discrimination against HIV-positive people. Over 35 million people worldwide are HIV positive, including over 3 million children who have inherited the virus from their mothers. A Philippines court jailed and fined a U.S. Marine for killing a Filipino transgendered woman last year after he discovered her gender status in a local hotel room. PFC Joseph Scott Pemberton was found guilty of homicide by strangling Jennifer Loud and dunking her head into a toilet in the hotel they had checked into after meeting. He was sentenced to 6 to 12 years in jail and was also ordered to pay about $130,000 to Laud's family. The victim's mother was happy with the verdict, but not with the jail term, which was less than if Pemberton had been found guilty of murder.
Jennifer was not the first victim of U.S. soldiers, but this was the first conviction that resulted in a victory. Even then, this was a bitter win because, first of all, murder was not the language used, and it's angering. The court said there was no evidence of cruelty, but it was clear that the victim suffered numerous injuries, was choked and drowned in a toilet. And if that's not cruelty, I don't know what is.
Official results show that Roch-Marc Christian Kabore has won Burkina Faso's presidential elections. Now this after a year of turmoil that saw the West African country's former leader deposed and the military trying to seize power in a coup. According to the Electoral Commission, Kabore won the vote in the first round with over 53% of ballots. And now to sports, where a consortium of Chinese investors bought a 13% stake in Manchester City's parent company, City Football Group, for $400 million. Now, the deal is part of the CFG's strategy of expanding into Chinese football, and it reflects the Chinese president Xi Jinping's aim to turn his country into a football powerhouse. The deal, which values CFG at around $3 billion, is still subject to regulatory approval. And on Sunday in Thailand, monkeys could be seen devouring feasts as they enjoyed the annual Monkey Buffet Festival at a temple in Lopburi, as it's called. Locals and tourists are estimated to have provided over 400 pounds of food for them there. Traditional dancing and processions were also staged as tourists and locals enjoyed the monkeys' company. And that little guy is definitely enjoying their company there. Plenty more on all of those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English or Telesur English. I'm Cody Weddle. Have a great day.